Hey guys, today I wanted to talk to you about the Sigma 150-600 Contemporary. It's a lens that I've owned for a long time, that I've used extensively, and so I thought it'd be really appropriate to do a long-term review on this lens. You see a lot of reviews out there, they just have the lens, they try it out for a day, but this is going to be something where I've used this lens for years. I've used it to create a lot of these images you see behind me, and so I'm going to talk to you about what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and we'll go from there. So some of the things that I like about this lens are, first of all, the price. Yeah, I mean, you just can't beat that. To get a 600mm lens, and right now I think it's $899, its regular price is $1089. To get 600mm for less than $1,000 is insane. I mean, if you're buying the Canon 600 f4, you're looking at spending like $13,000, which is like a car. And you don't have to do that with this guy. So $1,000 gets you 600mm lens. And that's about the cheapest of a 600mm that you can get right now. Tamron's 600mm is about $13.99. Another thing that's really nice about it is the actual size of the lens. It only weighs about 4 pounds. Without the hood, it's just over a foot long, I think. So it fits in my backpack. I can flip the hood around, park it in my bag, carry it on my back, and no big deal. Another thing that's really good about this lens is the stabilization function, which in Sigma they call it optical stabilizer. So here we have optical stabilization off, mode 1 or mode 2, and then even custom modes that you can program with the Sigma dock. Mode 1 is typically used if you're using your lens in this function and your subject is moving. Mode 2, if I flip that over there, is if I were panning or following a moving subject like this. You're going to want to use mode 2 to follow that plane. Another thing that comes in handy with this lens is, well, at 150, you know, you're pretty compact, but at 600mm, that baby comes out there. So if you're carrying your lens around, you can lock it in, so while you're walking around like this, it's not slowly telescoping out on you. You can see over time, it'll slowly feed that out. With that lock, you can carry it around and it's secure. The last thing that I want to mention about this lens that I consider a pro is how sharp it is. Being a wildlife nature photographer, sharpness is life. And so at 150mm, which is what this image here was shot with, we save a lot of that sharpness. This image is pretty sharp at 150mm. I don't have any problems with the sharpness of this image at all. But from there, I want to take you over to our first con. So that brings us to our first con, which is sharpness. At 150, and those mid-ranges were really good, but once we get out to 600, we're really stretching those optics and we lose some of the sharpness. It's best if we keep it about 500, that's where we save more of that sharpness, but sometimes you just gotta get that extra 100mm. So here, for instance, this image was shot at 600mm, and you can see a noticeable difference in sharpness between these swans and that bowl. When it comes to sharpness, this lens still performs pretty good compared to the Tamron and its other Sigma counterpart, the Sport. The Tamron 150-600 Generation 2 or G2 is, honestly, it's about the same in sharpness, maybe a little bit better. Where that lens really excels is in the image stabilization, which is very advanced. But the Sigma Sport 150-600 is actually much sharper than this, but you're also doubling the price and doubling the size and weight. The second thing that I consider a con is the aperture. So it's a variable aperture lens, which means that as I zoom out and in, that aperture inside opens and closes, and we can see that indicated here. So at 150mm, the lens is an f5. At 600mm, the lens becomes a 6.3, and 6.3 doesn't do very good for autofocus. It doesn't let in a lot of light, it makes the lens struggle, it makes the camera struggle. It's harder to keep fast shutter speeds when you're shooting wildlife photography at 6.3. So I briefly mentioned this just a moment ago, but the autofocus can be an issue with this lens, especially when it's at f6.3. Cameras struggle a little bit to focus at f6.3, it's just not a lot of light. And the motor in this lens is pretty darn slow. So when you're tracking a moving object, you're trying to track a bird in flight, you're really going to see that lens hunt back and forth quite a bit. It has been probably the most frustrating thing for me about owning this lens. The main thing that I don't like about it is that autofocus. But with everything else considered, I think it's a reasonable compromise. You get the lens for less than $1,000, you get 600mm. You know, if it's not going to autofocus quite as fast as you want it to, at least you're not spending $13,000 on a Canon 600 f4. So overall, I like it. It serves as a really good lens to start off with if you're not really wanting to push that $13,000 price tag. I think this is the way to go. And it competes very closely with its counterparts, especially the Sigma Sport and the Tamron 150-600, that I don't feel like either of those two lenses are better enough for me to justify getting rid of this one and buying one of them. Eventually, I do plan on upgrading from this lens, but right now with the options that are available, I don't see a reason to, especially because I cannot shell out $13,000 because my wife would kill me. So if you're going to Yellowstone National Park or you're wanting something that you can photograph wildlife with, this is the lens to get, to be honest with you. If you want to get further than that 250, than that 300, than that 400, this 600mm is the lens to get if you're going to do wildlife photography at a budget. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Take care.